Hello, this is Jer, and I'm playing Oxygen Not Included, and I'm in the radioactive ocean asteroid, destroying this interplanetary launch, or no, the actually payload opener, and just noticing there's some natural gas leaking into the future power plant or nuclear power plant that I want to construct. Not a big deal; that can be fixed. But I'm relocating that further to the right because, as you can see here, I need a little bit of extra space to complete this power plant. I currently have the payload opener located down here along with the beacon. So that's going to receive natural gas, oil, lead, and some other materials. So that will be the new location for natural gas at least. So we've got that, and I'll keep removing stuff from over here until I've got enough space. In the inverted world here, I've got some extra water, so I've got a pump down there to fill up some spots I want to turn to ice. Also got some bottle openers, so if they just have some extra water, they can dump it there to put it in the actual location that I want it to be. So specify this to be water. It doesn't have to be swept. Any location where there's bottled water, they can just put it into there. That way they don't stay idle while I spend my time with the dupes on the homeworld and let these guys slowly make some ice in this world. I'm in need of steel, in particular for creating things inside what's going to be the nuclear power plant on the top left of my base. So I'm just going to make 33 units of those, and I've got, let's say, 22 pieces of iron. As you would have seen earlier, I had some natural gas leak into this, so I'm just destroying a few of the drywall in here just to let that create a vacuum a little bit quicker. Okay, a little bit of a problem here. This is actual pipe that is broken and behind this machinery here, and that's causing the inability to do some cooling. So I'm going to have to crack open to this spot, make the fix, and close it back up, similar to that I did in the polymer press fix in the previous episode. So started off building a shelf over here with some drywalling. Going to drop off some Napalitha material here. I've got lots of it. If you've seen from a previous episode, I didn't necessarily want that, but since it's there, I'm going to make use of it because it is material that won't evaporate at high temperatures. The moment I crack into this zone, the first thing that I want to do is create some drywalling on these two tiles because I'll be losing steam. Nice thing is steam isn't going to be rushing out to the right side of this chamber. It'll be trapped. It'll be going away from these two tiles that there's going to be destroyed here in a second. One that's right there. And I'm just going to pause this, do drywalling, install that at high priority. But what this is ultimately going to do once I have this drywalling in there, it's going to allow my dupes to go in there in their slower time and make the repairs that are necessary. So I can see some granite's already being supplied, so it looks like they're not going to waste a whole lot of time creating that drywall, which means I won't waste as much steam. Fortunately, Miner had decided to go away. Okay, tag team, there's cleaner. Are they? No, they're not going to make that drywall. Now that the drywall has been created, the dupes were able to get in there and make the repairs to the machinery and pipes. So because this zone here, or because this aquatuner is no longer responsible for keeping the top of the this mini red bolt generator is just responsible for the sleet wheat. I don't expect I'll be in an overheat situation. I'm just going to create these as tiles again because the hot area on the right has some pipes going through, and I don't want those taking on heat when it's going through this zone here. So that's why I'm destroying this this little shelf when it's when this repair is being done. The other thing is I upped the temperature that brine goes into it. I think it was -5 before. I made it -4. So that may also have been one of the things. You see a little piece of salt there. I think possibly brine actually got too cold and solidified potentially when it went through the aquatuner. So that situation should hopefully all be avoided. Now that this last tile has been fixed, as I mentioned, I'm going to destroy those tiles and the drywall just around it. Not that that's so much critical because it'll be in a vacuum area anyways, but why not? And then hopefully this will return to normal and that sleet wheat will get cold again. And we'll have some food or some more pepper breads, though we'll over 600,000 calories, so not too concerned at this point. Actually, I'm short in line, so why not take that as a gift? So in the nuclear power plant, I'm building a similar pass-through area here. This is going to actually be permanent, unlike the ones that I had in the two other locations, the one that I just fixed in the heat management area. So this will actually, and now I've got a vacuum in the nuclear power plant itself, so I can actually fill in the excess drywall. This is going to allow dupes to get in here while there's steam. Just inspecting the Aquatuner, it looks like everything is going well over here. So repairs have gone good. Okay, so now I've got to put some, might as well use an Apple material here. Drywall is sitting underneath. Again, the whole idea here is just to put just enough so that when hot steam gets in this zone, the steam's not going to be able to escape, but my dupes will be able to enter this. So if I want to make changes or repairs to the nuclear power plant, I won't have to create this little shelf area. They'll be able to, the dupes will be able to go into it automatically. And instead of using Atmos suits, I'll actually give them more protective equipment. But I'll wait until the actual nuclear power plant is turned on, or the research reactor has material, water, and all that, and actually outputs radiation. So at the moment, I don't have the excess radiation in this zone, but I will in time. Just waiting. This is kind of the dark zone at the far left, taking advantage of every single tile that I can here. But my dupes actually have a little bit of area to walk up and down on the left of this, despite the fact that you probably can't see that in the video. It is now time to construct the core of nuclear power plant, which is a research reactor. So I'm going to actually make this out of steel, put it in the center. This is just above one of the steam turbines, and I got 4 steam turbines on the top of each side of that, and 3 in the middle sections on each side of that as well. Everything that's being constructed out of here with refined metal is always going to be steel, because it's going to get quite hot in the zone. I'm actually going to put a little dot of automation wire to make it not active when it starts. The research reactor is built. Next thing I want to do is have a mechanism to get rid of some of the nuclear waste. I had pumps in the past, but that's just a waste of power. Why not just have a door on either side of this that detects nuclear waste, and if there is some, it opens the door and closes it before steam can escape. Just decided to move the doors over one tile, just ensuring that I can get the hydro detector above it. That's going to tell me whether there's any liquid there or not. So actually, all I need to do is actually have a single tile with a vacuum underneath it. And this is where nuclear waste is going to pile into when there's enough above the door. And it's going to be just leaking off into space, not having to worry about it. And then after that, so this is the automation that's going to detect whether the door should be open or closed. And we'll have a hydro sensor located above, again making this out of steel. And that's just going to open and close the door as needed. Much less electricity used than the pump. In fact, 0. These doors don't have to be powered. They can open slowly, and that's completely fine. So this is where the enriched uranium is going to be dropped off. And unlike the smaller build where I need cooling cycles, where I need to control how much, I can put in as much as I want. This place is not just about generating power from the heat of the research reactor and the steam turbines. It's also about rad bolts. And I want to be able to actually generate a lot more rad bolts than I currently do in this current system, or the system that was on the right. So I'm going to have a lot of them built all the way around, and they're ones on the left are going to shoot up, sort of going in a cycle, in a clockwise cycle. But I'll have this, actually maybe not the last one, but we'll see once I have the rad bolt reflectors how this is all going to go. So now I'm just doing some of the piping. The piping that has transporting water in or out of the nuclear power plant is all made out of insulated material with ceramic. And I have 2, actually I'm going to bring that one up a little bit higher, but I'm going to have water brought in from the bottom and water dropped off from the top. The water that's dropped off from the top is about cooling, and the water that goes in from the bottom is to actually go inside the research reactor itself. And I'll actually have 2 separate liquid vents. They're going to be made out of steel as well. So you can see why I actually, let's bring them over one more so that they actually land on the top of the actual machinery itself. Not that that's a huge deal, but why not? So you can see I already have power that exists around the research reactor and the rad bolts. I'm actually going to have automation for each one of those in the future. One of the things that a research reactor needs is lots of water. Water for cooling, but water to go into the actual input of the research reactor itself. So I'm actually going to connect all the piping for this. Remember that the research reactor right now is disabled by automation wire because I put a single piece of that in there. So I can actually put water inside that and not worry about anything starting off, actual reaction at this point because it's disabled. But before I even want to consider it running, I actually want to fully load these 3 liquid reservoirs so that by the time I operate, I'm not going to be in a situation of not having enough water because I could have a meltdown. If the research reactor needs water, you don't give it water, you could be in a meltdown situation. Not something you want to see. Terribly sounding noise that has happened several times because either the research reactor can't sweat out water or can't input, and you don't have water to put into it. Now turning some attention to the inverted world here, I'm just going to give this dupe the demolition skill. Give them some carrying skills as well, because there's some things that I want them to be able to destroy before I'm able to create more spots for ice. Going back here to the nuclear power plant, I also need an exit area over here, but this is not for dupes. This is actually for rad bolts. Normally I build a rad bolt joint plate and I just wait for it to melt into some naphthalene material, and then have that be the channel that rad bolts can go out without letting steam escape. But since I've got an excess, just a tremendous excess of that material, I'm just going to dump some there now and not even bother with melting a joint plate. Okay, just realizing some power needs to be connected through steam turbines, so no point in running those without power being connected. And I'm just going to direct everything to go to this point here. So this is the location where rad bolts are going to be exiting the nuclear power plant that I'm constructing, and I'll use that for everything from engines to creating diamonds to research, and of course interplanetary launchers as well. So all those have to be lined up such that they point towards a reflector that's going to direct it to go to that output. Now, just one minor note, the shorter distance that your rad bolts go, the more rad bolts you actually get because they actually waste while they travel. Before the nuclear power plant is constructed, I want to have the ability for my dupes to have protective suits while they go into that spot, because it does not take long for radiation sickness to occur while a research reactor is active and a dupe is standing right next to it doing, even if it's just a minor action like building a couple things or destroying a few things. The minor research reactor area that I had earlier, anytime I had dupes go in there and the research reactor was active, I was very limited in what I could do because I knew my dupes would be taking on radiation sickness and potentially even die. It's not just a matter of them making mess all over the base, but if they actually take enough radiation poisoning, that's the end of them. They're dead. So what I want to do here is, before I even turn this one on, I'll have a zone on the left that's going to be set just for these protective suits that will include the area that the dupes can go up and inside the research reactor while it's active. I may even have a door to prevent them from going in when I don't want them to, but if I want some sort of repair to occur or some sort of change, it'll just be really nice that I'll have the suits handy, ready to go, and I'll have an entryway that they can get in there, make some sort of modification. So just digging out this area, and we'll see those protective suits going here. I've got a rad bolt engine at this location. I'm going to start the process of constructing this as a ship. So it'll have a safe air module and a top to that. And then once this is constructed, and I already have some lead in this location, so I can actually explore a new planetoid soon. I'm not in any rush at the moment, but just have the engine filled for that. And I'm actually going to relocate these to be just as close as possible to the nuclear power plant, because I want to have my Red Bull engines as close as possible. As I mentioned, as Red Bulls travel, they have wasted time. But I'm also going to load this with some carbon dioxide. This is the actual non-Red Bull engine. I have possibly just one more mission for it, to go to the Desolins, and the point is to get some fossils, because we're short in line, and I need more steel to actually complete the nuclear power plant. So my goal is just to get this filled with enough carbon dioxide to get there and back, to send 2 dupes over there, probably the same dupes that I had before. They'll do some digging of fossils. I could either use the interplanetary launcher, but I'm probably just going to get the fossils to be loaded into in a bin inside the rocket. They'll fly back, and then I'll be able to get my steel. Just notice that I'm using the heavy-duty wires when I'm actually in the nuclear power plant. And actually, taking advantage, I don't even need a joint plate for that, because I can actually just go through this zone here. And that's going to allow this aquatuner to be powered. I had put a vent back here on top of the spot where the polymer press is outputting its carbon dioxide. I no longer want to do that, because I want to get this rocket filled with carbon dioxide. So once that has been reconstructed, actually, let's destroy that vent too, or the path to that vent anyways. And that's going to direct the carbon dioxide into that engine, and I suspect this just might be the last time I ever launch a carbon dioxide engine. I'll fill this area with oxygen, preventing some of the waste of algae, and water, so that they can use the lavatory while they travel. So just connect it with that, and then I'll actually take advantage of rebuilding the platform when they're going to. So here I'm building some piping. One thing that I'm careful not to do is have all the water converge from all these steam turbines into a single liquid vent, because it would actually get sort of clogged in the pipes, because it would be too much water and would be limiting how much spits out. So I believe the correct number is the maximum that you want is 5 per pipe. I'm actually doing 3. So I've got 9 in total, so that's why I've got 3 liquid vents. Each one of those is going to output the water from 3 steam turbines. On top of the outputting the water for cooling, it's also going to be a self-sustaining system in terms of water. I won't need to continually supply this with water. Just going to be careful about the direction. That's why I'm building these pipes, or those directional pipes going up bridges, and that's just going to take water to go in the upwards direction and ultimately feed back into the inside of the nuclear power plant. Again, just preventing me from having to apply new water over. So they're all going to go in one of 2 directions, but once it goes in the upward direction, I just want to prevent sort of this confusion where it doesn't know which direction to go, because once you go through a liquid bridge, you're never going to go back again. So it just kind of makes it clear to the algorithm to determine where water should flow. So the bottom one is just for going for the cooling on top of the research reactor, and this one here is the output of water that goes from the top of them, that's going to ultimately feed back into the inside of the research reactor. So I have this area here dug out for some protective suits. I want a dip down area just the same as I have for the Atmo suits. So I'm probably just going to choose brine for that. And that's going to prevent oxygen from escaping in the same way that the Atmo suit area has it for. And then also I'll need to connect to the brine line. And as I'm doing this, just make sure that, so I'll put the liquid vent there for that. And of course, before I fill it, just make sure that you put in some drywalling, because if I were to connect it at this very moment, it would actually just be draining into space, because it just happens to be, well, it depends on exactly where it is. It's unsure whether I'll need drywalling or not, but once they dig into there, should know here in just a second if Astronaut can do some digging. Yeah, let's just put some drywalling in there at that location, just so that liquid doesn't spill out. Also going to dig out this area, because the the actual protective equipment is taller than the atmosuit stations. Atmosuit stations are 3 tall. This is going to be 4. I'll have a checkpoint, and then the actual stations themselves. So I'm going to put this one here. So from this point on, any dupe that is going to be going through there will actually have the radioactive protective suits, rather than just the atmosuits that only gives, well, it gives you, actually does give you some form of protection, it may, but certainly not as much. A little bit of drywalling I can see is going to be needed above. Earlier, way back in my first playthroughs, I think this is one of the more painful points, is just having a single tile exposed inside your base that you've forgotten about. And right now you can see oxygen sort of flowing to the left. If you ever see that sort of flowing type of motion, that's indication of maybe I dug out a spot inside one of the corners or tops of the base that has that space exposed, and I'm just wasting a lot of oxygen. So stay on top of that. Here in the inverted world, I've got a cooling system that's not running yet. I need some water to go inside there, so this is going to go on top of the steam turbine, keeping that cool. I'll need to have, once that's filled up, I'll put in a lot of water inside that chamber on the bottom. And the idea there is twofold. One actually, so I'm just going to make a temperature gauge here. So I need to expand this a little bit, but the water underneath it is going to keep the aquatuner cool, and the steam turbine will keep the steam cool, so I don't get overheating from the aquatuner. But it also has the potential to act as a battery, because I can actually get that, because there's no polymer press now, I can get that area hotter and change it to power the steam turbine if I have got a temperature sensor in there as well. So I want a tiny bit, a very tiny bit of water in here. I normally aim for 400 kilograms of water. And this is going to go into the hot magma area to act as a power source. So I can push this tiny bit of water under the steam turbines that have hot magma. And then when I'm not in need of power, let's say the solar panels are enough during the day, I can actually start to drain the water out and direct it to not go back in there. So this is what I'm doing there. So, and I don't want to have a lot of water. That's why I'm just calculating just a very small amount. I do have to, as with all steam turbines, make sure you have a system to cool off. Now, one thing I'm aware of, the cooling liquid I'm going to use is brine, but it's going to be negative temperatures. So we do not want it to just free flowly go on top of the steam turbines, because that will actually freeze the water that I have in there and actually turn the water to ice, meaning that it won't have any sort of cooling effect on the actual steam turbine. So that's why I've got a temperature gauge that I'm going to put there to say only actually put the freezing brine through when the water is sufficiently warm enough, and when it's cool enough, let's say 20 or 30 degrees, stop putting the cold brine in until it is once again needed. Here we are once again in the home world. You can see I've got now a checkpoint and a little bit of confusion. That's because the atmosuits and the checkpoint for this is converged to a single spot. So I'm making a wall, a divider, between where the dupes will wear atmosuits and where the dupes will wear the heavier protective equipment, because I don't want those to interact in such that it'll cause confusion, such as they'll put on the protective equipment and go back inside the atmosuit station, or vice versa. So now that I've got the two zones, I need to make it very clear to the dupes that there must be some sort of wall or divider such that when they put in one suit, they can't cross into the zone where the other suits will be go. And that's a good rule if you had an area where the masks were to be worn. You don't want to intermix these zones. And even if you have the atmosuits themselves, you don't have different exits that converge to the same spot unless you very carefully manage that, and it's usually meaning that you have the same number of atmosuits in both spots and you have it in and out. Anyway, I'm planning to avoid that situation where I have that. Basically, I'm going to have just two clear zones: the protective equipment zone, which includes the nuclear power plant, and the atmos zones, which is everywhere else on top of the base where my dupes won't be able to breathe, including going into the rockets. I have done designs where my dupes will actually take their masks or their atmosuits off before they go inside the rockets. but I don't think I'm going to do that. It just means, all that means is whenever I do a space mission, I have to manually go inside the rocket and take off their suits for them. So now I'm just providing an oxygen line that's going to connect into there, so it'll go right after the Atmo suits. And these ones are a little bit bigger, so they're 2 tiles wide versus the Atmo suit station, which is only 1. So I'm going to build a connection up at various points, and I'll just allow my dupes to have, probably, I don't need as many of these as I need Atmo suits, luckily, because they're much bigger. So I think 5 should be plenty, because I'm going to actually fully construct at least 90% of the nuclear power plant in while my dupes are just wearing normal Atmo suits, because there's no high amount of radiation, it's just radiation from space itself. And then I'll wait for the zone to become active until all my Atmo suits are created and loaded. Now, speaking of which, I need to actually create these, so I need to have lots of lead at this point. So I'm going to make 6, 1 more than I actually need, an infinite supply of the worn ones. So as they're worn, someone will automatically take it down and build a new one. Okay, so now that I have those in place, let's say I also need power, and I also need to actually specify the actual suits to be loaded into each one of those. So for power, it's easy. Same as Atmo suits. Atmo suits also need power. I use heavy wire for that. And I'm actually going to build a ladder here. I'm a bit worried that some of the sand, notice the sand that may fall when I'm well, that will fall, I should say. That may be exposed to space, which means that's why I'm putting a ladder there, just to account for that situation that may occur, that I may need to either build a tile or some drywall to prevent more oxygen from being wasted. This is the inverted world here. So what I've got is a need to have a battery, which I already have, a smart battery that doesn't have automation connected. So I'm just going to connect this with lead wire, or lead automation wire. So I already brought some lead over to this world, and this is going to tell both the steam turbines when to operate. So basically going to give some sort of indication. It's going to be 90% or less power. Once you hit this, then the steam turbines can become active. I even have an override here. I'm going to actually put an OR gate that says basically if it's too hot or I'm going to need power, that's when the steam turbine should run. I've got enough water that's on top of the steam turbine. Now it's time to start loading the water that's in the chamber below. And I'm just going to manually, or keep an eye on that, just make sure it's not completely full. Because the last thing I want to do is to have it in such a situation where I can't vent any more water in that chamber. So that's why it can't be absolutely completely full. Now, the top layer of the water can be, let's say, 50 kilograms or something like that. It just can't be 99 or 1,000 at the very top one, but that process is just starting. It's going to be a big job keeping the top of all of these steam turbines on the nuclear power plant cool. So I'm going to actually have 2 of these aquatuners. And this will be the exact same design on the left side as I'm building right here on the right side. Basically, it's going to take the temperature of the brine that's going to go out and determine whether it's a certain temperature. And if it's too warm, let's say 20 degrees or something like that, it will go push the brine through the aquatuner. And if it's any cooler than, say, 20 degrees, then it will skip that process. And it's going to allow the water or the brine that's coming out, if I design it in this such a way, to go out in priority. So that one thing I do not want to have happen is some of that hot brine to be stuck inside the hot nuclear power plant air, even though it has in some insulated ceramic pipes. So that's a temperature checker that's going to happen right as the brine goes out, and that's determining this shutoff, directing the brine to either go into the aquatuner or bypass the aquatuner, such that it will no longer need to do cooling. Now I'm going to connect this with power. I did save myself, so this is a bypass area. I even created a door for my dupes. I'm just going to allow power to go through that zone, since I have just saved myself a single tile for my dupes to be able to get up on that side. One of the things that I made a mistake when I was building this nuclear power plant station in the past, and I've never actually built it with dupes before. I've only built it with in sort of debug mode. But this is the first time that I'm going to be actually constructing it with dupes. Anyway, one mistake I made is I turned on everything without putting any water inside of it, and those aqua tuners, both of them broke. So I'm going to avoid that situation. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going to connect this with water and have some pre-existing water already existing on the floor before we even begin. And that's going to hopefully save the aqua tuners on both sides from overheating, because they'll be exposed to water, that'll turn to steam, and the steam turbines I'm expecting will cool things off. All right, this is the protective suits. I've got 5 of them. They're loaded with, being loaded there with a little last bit of oxygen, and they're ready to use. But I don't need my dupes to actually use them, so I've sealed the exit so that they can't go into the zone. But before turning on the nuclear power plant and preventing my dupes from going out into the radioactive zone to possibly make any changes, I'll construct or I'll allow them to go out with those and seal the 2 different zones, such that atmo suits and those protective suits zones don't mix. And that, I think, is going to be it for this episode. I'm going to continue on the nuclear power plant and the sleet wheat on the inverted world. And that'll be it for now. So my nuclear power plant has largely been constructed. Still have a little bit of steel that's needed to finish off the last liquid vents and other things before I actually get it turned on. In the inverted world, things are going very well. I'm hoping to have in the next episode some actually cooling happening so that I can actually start creating some ice finally from some of my sleet wheat. If you want to see how all this turns out, watch some future videos, like, subscribe, and see you then.